So that answer is interesting to me. Because in all of the accounts that I read over the past 50 years, they include satanic rituals, the Illuminati, sex cults with group sexual orgies, profound vague green faces directing you to kill, substance use, a friend told you to do it. You wish to got out. You wish to have gotten out of a difficult relationship with another female at the same time. So, are you telling me now, sitting there, that all of those things weren't like they were things that were manufactured?
And those familiar with this channel might recognize the voice on the other end that belongs to the parole board member, Mike Pohl. And if you're familiar, you might not believe the words that you are hearing, the tone that you are hearing. I don't know if Mike Pohl took off his rose colored glasses for one hearing, because it is surprising to listen to the disgust in his voice, the shock at this man's now new reason for why he strangled a pregnant 15-year-old girl all those years ago. It was 1978 when he strangled her. And since then, it's been a roller coaster of excuses, of denial, of fantastical thinking. Apparently, he wrote an autobiography, which he will reference to time and time again in this hearing. We are about to walk into a Act 23 169 parole hearing out of the state of Connecticut that says, hey, if you are under the age of 21, you are now eligible for parole. And I said 21, not 18, because it's Connecticut's progressive agenda to try to find reasons or excuses for those who commit horrific crimes to have a chance at freedom. I'll tell you, this is somewhat of a treat to hear Mike Pohl do something other than make excuses for the worst of the worst. It is surprising, and we're about to hear it. So, with that, let's jump in.
Stephen THERRIEN, 71590.
Thank you very much. So this is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. THERRIEN, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you. And are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. As previously indicated, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Stephen THERRIEN, inmate number 071590. Mr. THERRIEN is serving a sentence of 17 years to life for murder and robbery in the first degree. There is victim input in this case. There is also an offender accountability plan in place that has been reviewed and shows that he has completed programming such as substance abuse and behavioral health programming. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls in the low range risk for recidivism. And utilizing the static 99R, the offender's overall score for sexual offense recidivism falls within the low range. Mr. THERRIEN, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
Good morning, board members. I'd like to express my remorse for my actions that led to the victim's death. I'm sorry for the pain I caused the family. Through education and participation in city yoga over the last 14 years, I don't believe I'm the same person I was when I was 19 years old. Studying child psychology, abnormal psychology, psychology of adjustment, educational psychology, human behavior in small groups, psychology of adjustment. I believe I've come to understand myself and where I went wrong as an adolescent and a teenager. And I don't plan on committing any more crimes if I'm ever released. And that's about it.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. THERRIEN. In preparation for today's hearing, this panel has reviewed your file extensively to include the following materials: police reports, pre-sentence investigation, court transcripts, your Department of Correction file that contains programs, disciplinary reports, and work and school evaluations. We've read letters of support and the summary of your interview with the parole officer, as well as the memorandum submitted by your attorney and your previous letters to the board, as well as your autobiography. We are well versed in your case, but have some additional questions. When we are done with our questions, we will ask the Office of Victim Services to facilitate any input, and then the state's attorney and your attorney will have the opportunity to provide statements. At the conclusion of the statements, the panel will deliberate, and we will be prepared to give you our decision here today. Do you have any questions before we begin?
No, ma'am.
All right, well, we will begin with my colleague, Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mr. THERRIEN.
Good morning.
So why did you commit this murder?
I was just confused. I just made mistakes. This time, there's no justification. I'm responsible for the death of the victim, and I have nobody to blame but myself.
So that answer is interesting to me. Because in all of the accounts that I read over the past 50 years, they include satanic rituals, the Illuminati, sex cults with group sexual orgies, profound sexual abuse, vague green faces directing you to kill, substance use, a friend told you to do it. You wish to have gotten out of a difficult relationship with another female at the same time. So are you telling me now, sitting there, that all of those things weren't like, they were things that were manufactured?
I don't wish to reiterate any of the circumstances around why I did it. I wish only to take full responsibility for it. I could sit here and talk about the autobiography and what led up to the murder, but I don't want the parole board to think I'm trying to put the blame of the murder on anyone but myself. I had the ability to make a decision, and I made the wrong decisions, and I regret the decision I made. I know the parole board doesn't want to hear defendants try to reiterate blame on other people. They want the potential parolee to take full responsibility for his crimes, and that's what I like to do now. I like to look at my autobiography as explaining the mitigating circumstances that surrounded what happened back in 1978.
Okay. Were you under the influence of alcohol or drugs when this offense was committed? When this offense was committed, you were. What were you under the influence of?
I was drinking and smoking marijuana.
And that was it at the time.
Pardon me?
So that was it at the time. You were intoxicated and you were high during this crime. Smart.
Yes.
Okay. So at the conclusion of the submittal from your attorney states that you've taken accountability for this murder. I don't know that I've really seen any of that in anything except what you put forth today. So can you help me with exactly how you've taken accountability for this?
Just by expressing that I take full responsibility for this crime, and I am very remorseful for my actions.
So, and here, you know, some of the things that I'm taking a look at, including programming and things like that, in your attorney's brief, your attorney even blames the DOC for failure to provide critical treatment, right? Don't you think it had something or maybe everything to do with your conduct? Because I'll tell you that sitting here, right? I've done a lot with 1584s, 2369s and commutations. So I've seen my fair share of people who have committed murder. And people who come before the board who actually, you know, have a great deal of regret, a great deal of taking responsibility and accountability, have a list of programming that they've been able to accomplish in DOC. And most of them have people who are successful at this have not had a disciplinary report in over 20 years, right? So I'm really having a hard time with the fact, and this is with or without trying to deal with, you know, varying mental health or trauma type things, right? So what I'm trying to figure out here is, you know, the finger's getting pointed at DOC, but I have a mountain of evidence from looking at past cases that it's just not the case that somebody can't get in the program. And I'm just wondering, is it your inability to stay out of trouble that caused this? Or can you help me here?
Well, all I know is when I've attempted to receive therapy and sex offender treatment, I'm continually told I'm a level 2, and in order to receive therapy, you have to be a level 3 or above. I'm also told that I've been on a waiting list since 2011 for sex offender treatment, which is kind of contradictory. Why DOC put me at a level 2, I don't know. I should have been at a level 3, so that would open the door for the therapy.
Okay, so I hear that piece, but I didn't hear anything about the DRs. 50 DRs, okay, is a lot of DRs. And you know that once you get a DR, you're not eligible to take programming for a certain period of time, right?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to figure out what might be the case here. Why?
What the case for why I get DRs?
Well, you get DRs and then you can't take programming.
Yeah, well, DRs since about 1990, a lot of them had to do with my litigatory activities, which implicated DOC staff in the murder of Warden Carl Robinson. I created a lot of enemies in DOC, and they tend to have fun putting crazy, assaultive inmates in my cell, which leads to fights. They put mentally ill people in my cell and then stop their medication, knowing that it could create problems. The gambling tickets, I take full responsibility for that. I gambled to raise money so I could survive financially.
So Public Act 23-169 is meant to recognize the stages of brain development. And thus reducing culpability for an offense. Okay, so that's why we're here, right? To take a look at what that's all about, right? And if that indeed did happen, right? I reviewed a lot of documents related to this case. We're searching for that evidence of reduced culpability based upon age. Right? Just doesn't mean with the 23-169 just doesn't mean that everybody under the age of 21 has reduced culpability because, you know, in the offense that they committed. That's what we're here to find, you know, find evidence of, right? Can you point out to me how your lack of brain development, your lack of maturity led to you committing this offense?
No,
How did your lack of maturity lead to you committing this offense?
I have no explanation. I just made some bad decisions, and I regret what I did, and I don't plan on committing any crimes if I am ever released.
Okay. What do you think the victim of this case went through?
Pardon me?
What do you think the victim of this case went through?
You're referring to at the time of the crime?
Yeah.
She was probably horrified.
I mean, there's difference between somebody getting shot in a gunfight, somebody getting choked out with a bandana, right?
Yeah.
What do you think your family went through?
I'm sure that my actions caused a lot of pain for the family. And I regret the pain I caused them.
what do you think your family would have gone through if this somebody had done this to you?
We would have experienced the same pain as the victim's family.
Right? It's taking somebody that's young and wiping them out. Right? They don't get to live their life. Right? You've been able to take very few programs while incarcerated, and we've already discussed that. And you talked a little bit about, and I can appreciate that that you, and congratulations to you on your associate's degree. And going through and taking some psychology classes and human behavior and stuff like that. You led to the small groups that you were able to participate in. However, you're in prison for murder. And that murder, do you think that handling something like that in a small group is sufficient when it comes to rehabilitation, that we should feel comfortable that if you're released, you're not going to commit any more offenses? In comparison to other people that in DOC that you've seen that have committed murder and gone through a whole bunch of other programs?
I've gone through a lot of sex offender programs starting in 1979 through like 81 or 2. I've gone through all the substance abuse programming that was available at Summers. I was the chairman of the Alcoholics Anonymous for a while and Narcotics Anonymous. Since the first day I was let out of my cell after reaching prison, I went to the library and got a book on introduction to psychology. It's been a decade's endeavor for me to understand how I went from a full-time college student at Thames Valley on the street with aspirations to be an engineer to serving 17 to life for taking the life of the victim. To continue to talk in that realm only takes us to the mitigating circumstances, and I let my autobiography and your responses to that deal with that rather than spending the parole board's valuable time of me reiterating the mitigating circumstances surrounding this crime. But
So you spent a lot of time in Sita Yoga. It's actually been in there for 15 years, right?
yeah,
Okay. Talk to me about what that is.
I get 2 lessons every month that talk about various aspects of the spiritual path of City Yoga. And I've grown to accept God in my heart, in my life. And when I get out, if I ever do, or if I remain in prison for the rest of my life, my priority is to study these lessons and move closer and closer to what is termed self-realization. And, I've come to believe that everything and everyone is God. I love everyone. It doesn't matter if I never get out of prison. I still love the people that are making the decisions in the parole board. I love all my enemies. I might not agree with decisions or what they do, but I love them as a person because it's my belief that I am everyone and everyone is me. I've grown to believe through the study of City Yoga that individuality is a delusion necessary to live out our karma in each incarnation. It's necessary to believe that other people are individuals, but in reality, I am just as much every individual that ever lived as they are of me. These are some of the things that I've learned. I couldn't commit short of self-defense crime against anyone else because I love everybody. Everybody is me. It'd be self-destructive to commit crimes against anyone.
Thank you for explaining that to me. I also wanted to point out in the submittal that we got from your attorney, that Attorney Foreman pointed out that the evaluation from the connection, they stated that you were appropriate for community-based treatment. What that actually means is if we find you in a 2369 that you have reduced culpability and then we find you suitable for parole, that when you were in the community, you would be welcomed into the connection to take their programming. It is not a recommendation that you be released and put into treatment in the community, right? They don't get into the decision-making business as to who belongs on the street and who doesn't. So I wanted to clarify that for you. Just so you understand. And then, for me, when it comes to programs, further programs in treatment while incarcerated in cases like this is an absolute must for me. I can't get to suitability, right? Unless I can see programming that was done there, that I can ask questions of to actually gauge offender change. There's alternatives to violence, basic and advanced. There's a whole bunch of other programming there that you can get involved in that would lead to the type of questioning and thinking that we can get to actually take a look at what has facilitated the change to get us to suitability. So that's the rough spot for me. I just have to be honest with you. And then a couple of things I know that in terms of your release plan that you put in, that you would want to be a part of a halfway house, and to start things there. And then when it came to employment and such, you were talking about Social Security and stuff like that and getting a part-time job. So I don't know how that all plays in. I'm not somebody who's, that's for the field to figure out, right? However, there's a lot there. And I mean, I read this inside out and backwards on a couple of things, just to try to put everything together. I really hope that you can continue to try to focus on programming that's DOC offered, and that can promote and take off from actually how you started this hearing today. Because those things that you said in the beginning of the hearing is actually the first time that publicly we're hearing that come from you, right? So that's important for me to hear. So, and is there anything else? I mean, there's other board members may have questions for you, but is there anything else that we have not covered today that your attorney will get the opportunity later, but that you wanted to cover before I turn the questions over to other board members?
No,
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. So, Mr. Therrien, with your work and your study of psychology, do you appreciate the importance of language and the meaning of words?
yes,
I do as well. I put a lot of value in how someone expresses themselves. And while I appreciate the remorse you've expressed today, your opening statement that you have remorse for the acts that led to the victim's death, to me, is a gross minimization of your actual responsibility for causing this young 15-year-old victim's death. Do you hear how that language, acts that led to the victim's death, is very distancing from actual, I murdered that child?
I suppose I should have termed it different than that. I should have said I was remorseful for causing the death of the victim.
Because that is what happened. And hearing the acts that led to the victim's death made me think of a DUI situation where the driver hits another car and causes that person's death in their vehicle. And this is a very different set of circumstances. You held your hands around that bandana until this woman died. Child, woman, on the cusp of womanhood. So a few other things. You referred to your crimes as mistakes. And these were choices that you made, to leave her body there on the bed and flee the situation by calling a cab that you intended to steal the vehicle from the driver, which you did, causing, I'm sure, great trauma, because what I read was he pled for his life, that you not kill him, you just take the car. The one standout in this situation is that when you were apprehended by the police, you did tell them that the victim was dead on the bed. in the place where you were staying. So that was the one. You didn't take it to trial because you had made a full confession. When you were asked by my colleague about why you committed this crime, you said confused. I need you to unpack that for me. Confused about what?
I explain in detail what my state of mind was at the time of the crime in my autobiography. And I let my autobiography stand for itself. I'm not here to reiterate elements, what exactly happened.
Okay, so the confusion was, again, hearkening back to the victim agreed to you putting the bandana and pulling it tight around her neck? That caused you confusion, that she wanted it?
Perhaps I just should have said, instead of confused, had trouble making decisions that were adequate and appropriate at the time.
It was interesting to have you tell my colleague that you were under the influence, because at sentencing, the judge specifically asked you if you have a drug problem. And you said, I have nothing to say about using drugs at this time. So when you were interviewed by Parole Officer Wangertsman and asked to identify high risk, you said substance abuse. And your answer to her plan of how you're going to manage that was to stay away from it. And that hardly seems adequate if your substance abuse contributed to your decision in a trouble with making decisions situation, resulting in you taking the life of another person. And you said to us twice that you don't plan to commit any crimes if you are released. Did you plan to commit this crime? I know you planned to commit the robbery, but did you plan to commit the murder?
That question is answered in my autobiography.
Ms. Chance, any questions for Mr. THERRIEN?
I just have one or two. So, Mr. THERRIEN, throughout all the documents that Madam Chair identified, which I reviewed, at no time did you express any genuine remorse for the victim. Why today?
It's my recollection that every time I appeared at a parole hearing, I started it with expressing my remorse. Did you people look at the tapes of the past hearings?
We have the documents of the hearing. But
It's
for
my
me,
recollection.
and the reason I asked that is because later on down, even though you, when you were caught after the chase, you confessed to the murder of the 15-year-old. But then later on, you stated, I'm not guilty of killing the victim. So when did you decide or figure out to accept responsibility for killing the victim?
My recollection is I've expressed such at every parole hearing.
Okay, so going back to your interview with Parole Officer Wangertsman, Why was it so difficult for you to answer her questions?
I told her why, because parole board doesn't want to hear what the real facts of the case were. If the real facts of the case don't express full responsibility, or accepted full responsibility for the crime, the parole board doesn't want to hear that. Parole board,
Oh,
from my understanding, only grants parole to people who accept full responsibility of the crime.
so if you couldn't answer those questions, why are you saying that you're expressing such remorse today?
Because irregardless of the mitigating circumstances in my autobiography, I still feel bad about taking another individual's life. That doesn't diminish whether or not there was other factors that it could explain why my behavior led to the loss of life.
So do you think the psychology courses that you've taken over a period of several years was able to satisfy you that your previous list of different sets of circumstances and people who you previously blamed, did you learn from any of those courses that you can't blame those people?
The courses helped me to understand my state of mind at the time of the crime, and helped me to understand when I came out of repression as to child sexual abuse in the resulting disassociation disorder that put me in a position to be very suggestive to other people that were relevant to the murder of the victim. It made me understand and come to terms with the disorder. And I believe that by acknowledging the abuse and the disorder, I'm not susceptible to other people's demands and requests. I read somewhere recently that one of the reasons why this youth hearing took place is because people from 25 and under, generally speaking, don't have mature brains and they're more susceptible to peer pressure. In my case, when you complicate that with a then ongoing disorder in the intentions of other people at the scene of the murder, then what the gentleman was asking for, I said I couldn't tell him. He said, he asked me a question, something to the effect, how do you explain the psychological inability to make the right decisions back then? Well, it's based in part, in addition to the age, substance abuse, a disorder that was well aware of by other people and was manipulated by them. It's my fault. Everything that transpired in my autobiography that led up to the death of the victim is my fault in respect that I made the stupid ass decision to move into a house of Luciferians. I was raised as a Catholic, and the Bible says don't enter the house of Satan. At the time I was an atheist. I believed that my frame of mind was I didn't care if they worshiped Jesus Christ, Muhammad, or Lucifer, as long as they didn't push their religion on me. But my response should have been, thanks, but no thanks.
What do you think DOC could have done for you that they haven't done?
Well, they could have provided me with competent mental health professionals instead of a sex cult parading as mental health professionals. The whole DOC Summers mental health staff ain't nothing but they were back in '79, were nothing but a bunch of sexual predators parading as mental health professionals.
But Mr. THERRIEN, I'm going to stop you there because that is your opinion. Okay? And your opinion doesn't mean that it's what you're saying. Because DOC is a facility that provides care, but it also has to do with where you have met the DOC staff, what you're willing to say. And the fact that you could not answer quite a few of the parole officers' questions during the interview, that just tells me that you had issues with DOC staff and you were blaming them. So, like my two colleagues, I am very concerned about your lack of response. I appreciate the fact that, you know, today you're accepting responsibility for the death of this 15-year-old, but you have expressed it before, but for me, not in a genuine way. And I'm concerned that you have not taken any programs. And programs is a way to measure people's change. So I have no further questions for you, but thank you for answering mine. Sure.
At this time, we will turn the hearing over to Ms. Hamlet Williams to facilitate victim input. Mr. THERRIEN, you're asked not to interrupt or speak during this time.
Thank you. You may begin with your statement.
Yes. I never heard him say I'm sorry to the family, but I forgive him for that. But my other family not forgive for that. Why my sister lay on the ground dead when he was up walking, breathing, and while she was carrying the baby and she was pregnant at the time, and my mother and me had to go to a psychiatrist for all the power after lost my sister and lost her daughter, and my father is still alive. My mother passed away of cancer, and in her mind she's still alive out there, but she's in denial. I said, "Ma, she's gone. You can't bring her back. He took her life. You know, he couldn't walk away. You know, but he was in his I think that according to the paper, he was on not just pot, but on cocaine too. According to the paper, he was on high on drugs. Plus, I heard that back in 1978, that time. But I never heard him say sorry. Now, if I heard him say sorry about that, I can forgive about that. but my family not gonna forget about that. While she's laying on the ground, he's walking, breathing, she's not, and you can't bring my sister back, you know. And she was pregnant also, 3 months pregnant at the time, and but it can happen again if he was released. It can happen to other family, you know. It might happen to other family too, and I'm scared about that, you know. And he could have committed that. He should have committed that crime. He should have walked away and forget about that. But he was on drugs and the other things. So that's my statement.
Thank you so much for your statement. Thank you, panel.
Yeah.
You may mute back at this time.
Yeah. Yeah. My father cannot talk because he's got cancer and he's not feeling good. My mother's deceased. If she was alive, she would give her statement. I'm the only one to take over because I'm the only only child left. And I forgive him about saying sorry and then heard him say sorry before and also he come to the senses. But I don't think he should be out there. It might have to happen to other family too also. And he could walk away. So. That's my statement. Yeah.
Thank you. If you can mute your phone again, that would be great, and you can continue to listen.
Okay, I'm sure I can find my mute. Hold on, man.
Thank you. Thank you, panel.
Okay. Yep.
So at this time, at this time, I believe we only have one attorney present, the offender's attorney. State attorney Arducci was supposed to be present. Attorney Arducci, are you present on the record? No, I don't believe so. So we will just proceed with Mr. THERRIEN's attorney. Attorney Foreman, if you have any final remarks or statements you would like to make, you may do so right now.
Yes, thank you. Good morning again, members of the board. Thank you for taking the time to hear from us today. Before I speak about Stephen, I want to take this time to acknowledge the loss and the lasting harm that he has caused, not only the family, but the victim to this day, as you guys just heard. He understands that nothing he does now can undo that harm, and nothing said today is meant to minimize that in any way. But the person you're considering here today is not the same 19-year-old who committed those crimes. He's spent the last few months that I've spent getting to know him, he has opened up. You guys kind of saw a bit of that today when he was speaking. That is the version I've seen in my interactions with Mr. THERRIEN. He's made the most of the limited opportunities available to him. He's earned his GED, completed an associate's program. He's held various jobs while incarcerated. And he's done that all in his own initiative. He practiced his Siddha yoga that he spoke about at length for the last 15 years. And that is something that is important to him and something that he plans to do indefinitely to kind of keep himself grounded. The progress that he's made has been somewhat held back, not by his lack of motivation, but by the lack of access. I won't rehash the program's issues that he kind of spoke about with the mental health rating and things like that. But it's partly due to his life sentence. Yes, partly due to the DRs, but he's spent over a decade on wait lists for several of these programs that the board has encouraged him to get into. So I would just say that it would be the facilities such as the January Center and the Todd House that I mentioned in my supporting memorandum were not to imply that they have that the community-based recommendation is in any way to imply that they have a say, but rather options if he were released today in the community that could still provide that kind of supervised care, in addition to some of the sex offender treatment, mental health treatment that he desperately needs in order to ever be in society fully as an adult. Now he spent over 47 years incarcerated. That's most of his adult life. This would be an opportunity, if released today, to spend the remainder of his adult life on the outside, right, in society, still under supervised care. And we thank you for your time through speaking with us today for considering his request for parole to a community-based treatment facility or whatever else the board deems necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Foreman. I think part of the concern that my colleague was raising in your document was you're urging the board to direct an evaluation for a referral to those two programs, and that is not a role that we play. So at this point, we're going to discuss your case, Mr. THERRIEN. So give us just a few minutes and please don't interrupt. Mr. Parole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the reason why we're here today is a 23-169 here. It involves reduced culpability based on age. I can't find that. You know, it's I've seen acts been posted and things like that in other 1584, 23-169 hearings. But to actually point to something that shows that age played a factor in this offense, I don't have anything. So even to go beyond that with looking at suitability, I have a really hard time with the statement that, quote, the parole board wants to hear whatever it is that we want to hear. We're dealing with somebody who committed a murder by strangulation. So there was, it wasn't a bullet. It was a thought out act of what we're going to do here. And then, you know, we're talking about somebody who came to prison, put together 50 disciplinary reports. As of recently, they've appeared to decline some, but they're still there. I believe some of that stood in the way of his ability to take programming. However, he's been at facilities that have alternate to violence, both basic and advanced.
Or anger management.
Right.
Which would have addressed the 8 assault tickets, the, was it 9 or 11 fighting tickets?
But AVP in itself isn't, I need to sign up with DOC and get called for the program. AVP is people come into the prison on the weekend and put on the program that's open to people who request to do that. And we're dealing with a strangulation death, and alternatives to violence is like something that's really important to get to this, you know? And what you just said about anger management, and you know, there's other programs DOC related beyond violence and things like that, right? It's just not enough for me to, you know, and kudos to him, GED and associate's degree, that's a great thing to happen. But to suggest that the small groups that were related to psychology courses is enough to give me what I need to look at suitability, which means that I believe he can go out into the community and not commit this or some other kind of offense again. Versus public safety, you know? And it's, you know, this is where I have an issue. And the other piece of this, this autobiography piece, no. You come into a parole hearing and you come in with an honest statement about yourself, not something that you wrote at length that you could have done whatever with, but something where I can actually hear you, you know, discuss what you've been through. You know, I can appreciate that the Siddha Yoga, the philosophy that's there. And I can appreciate the fact that he's taken and engaged in that for the last 14 years. But then again, we're coming back to, you know, at the end, the satanic, you know, so responsibility and accountability for this thing is all over the place. So,
and I listened to him describe the philosophy and the underpinnings of this practice. And yet, while he was practicing, he was getting fighting DRs. And when asked about those, he blames DOC with a whole conspiracy theory that they are trying to trigger him, not only by putting other inmates in his cell that he might have conflict with, but as far as to suggest that they are taking those individuals off their medication to provoke him is a bit far-fetched, if, and that's a minimization.
So, yeah. So, Madam Chair, so where I am is that I'm not in favor of, I can't find him less culpable based upon age, and I can't find him suitable for parole. I know that based upon his life sentence, he would come back in 5 years. And in that 5 years, I would highly suggest, because he's going to come back and see us when he's 71. And I would highly suggest, or not necessarily, let me take that back. It's going to be reviewed.
Yes, thank you. It's an administrative review.
Reviewed to see if the board wants to see him when he's 71. And what I'd really like to be able to see is him engaging in programming. That is the type of programming that we can look at for change. I mean, and he's at, the facility that he's at, in the level that he's at, I'm sure that there's programming there that he can take, that he can advocate for himself, that maybe even the attorney could help him advocate for himself to be able to take that kind of program. So, but for me, Madam Chair, I don't have what I need to support a grant in a 23-169 grant.
What stands out for me of particular concern is a release plan. To have Mr. THERRIEN identify that substance abuse would be high risk, and not have a plan, having completed some programming, to mitigate that risk when he's back out in the community, but instead, to say he plans to stay away from drugs, I think is pretty naive, especially coupled with his comments about peer pressure, people manipulating him, people, see if I can get his words, exploiting, my word, his ongoing disorder, his words. Some of the things that we've heard today concern me in terms of the state of his mental health and what his plan is to manage the disorder he referred to, and life going forward, given his vulnerabilities and susceptible is what he said. So just to think that telling us that he does not plan to commit any crimes if he's released gives me absolutely no reassurance. I don't think there's a person that would sit in the chair he's sitting in that wouldn't say the same thing. And it's honestly, it's meaningless, especially if his plan isn't robust enough to address the risks that he really does face. So I would agree with you, Mr. Poland. Do not find Mr. THERRIEN suitable for parole release. Ms. Chance.
So I absolutely agree with what you, Madam Chair, and Ms. Poe has indicated today. I just want to add, he keeps referencing his autobiography in not answering the parole officer's question, not answering some of our questions today, but keep referring to it. But the autobiography concerns the fact that he's blaming several different entity and people for what's going on with him. And for me, he has not addressed that. He continuously blames the OC. I know I read where he was previously participating in a substance abuse program, but stopped because he had issues with the OC staff. So for me today, I also do not find him suitable.
So I would be looking at nature and circumstance, injury and impact, and poor institutional adjustment. Inadequate release plan is certainly something I spoke to.
I have inadequate program participation, have inadequate evidence of offender change.
I had those two,
But
and the nature.
I'm open to whatever it is,
Okay.
you know, but those, I mean, that's in my remarks, that's absolutely large.
Mhm. Yeah. So we have received an email communication from State's Attorney Narducci. He has been watching the hearing and says he agrees with the board's position. My impression is that Mr. THERRIEN lacks the insight into the consequences of his actions and was only expressing what he believes the board wanted to hear. So, in the matter of Stephen THERRIEN, inmate number 071590, there's a motion to deny parole for the following reasons: the nature and circumstances of your offenses, the injury and impact caused to the victim and the victim's family, your poor institutional adjustment, your inadequate program participation, and evidence of offender change. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So it's unanimous decision, Mr. THERRIEN.
Madam Chair, will this be reviewed again in 5 years?
There will be an administrative review in the year 2030.
Thank you all. This concludes the Public Act 23-169 hearing for Stephen THERRIEN, inmate number 071590, and it is 10:10 a.m. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
We will reconvene for the next case at 10:30.
Sorry to have wasted all your time.
Okay, and it was a denial, and it will be another 5 years, 2030, until they have an administrative review. Basically, they'll just get a notification on the calendar. They'll say, this case, should we have a parole hearing for him? And I guess, if I had to guess, it would depend on whether or not he takes more programs. So they see he took an anger management or something, like he did some work, then they'll give him another bite at the apple and maybe even parole him. But I don't have information to share on this case. I said, Sir Richard, can you come out of retirement and see if there's any way to find this autobiography? Because I would love to read it to you, but no, it's not there. I mean, it's not. I mean, let's be real. What are the odds that he somehow got it published? But the whole hearing was just wild. And what was most wild, again, if you're familiar with Mike Pohl is he wears the rose-colored glasses to a very disturbing degree. You can have a hearing, and I'm not exaggerating in any way whatsoever, where someone would do the worst to someone's little one, and that person would come on and cry and say, please don't parole this monster until my little one graduates high school in 3 years from now. And Mike Pohl would say, I don't see any reason that he should stay in prison. He should get paroled. And we see it over and over and over again. And to hear Mike, I know I'm harping on this. And I get it. I get it if you're not so familiar with this channel and you haven't heard Mike Poll before, that this would seem like such a dumb way to spend the unpacking. But it is like shocking when you spend, hundreds of parole hearings listening to this parole board member, and all of a sudden he is like, the glasses are off. I just couldn't believe it. And there must be so much more behind the scenes in this hearing that we just aren't looking at, that would really infuriate them, enrage them, because yeah, 50 write-ups is a lot, but it's not by far them. We've seen people with hundreds, and I, there's something so scarily off about him. Who else had the vibes of what's his name? Um what's that famous hold on. Charles Manson. I don't know why. I know he's not a complete up, but like just the whole idea of the satanic ritual crap, and this, when this happens, kind of like in 1970. I mean, it's not really near it at all, but you almost wondered if he was influenced by that. Maybe I'm stretching, but it's the whole, like, his whole yoga thing. I mean, can you even imagine this guy doing yoga? What? It's just the whole thing is so. And by the way, I'm a yoga guy. I love yoga, hot yoga. My Mama Do was a yoga teacher for a long time, all into the yoga stuff. But he's like, I just I don't know what to say. There's something so scary, so off about him. So I think like it's a perfect example. I'm not diagnosing anyone. I'm only speculating on a situation like this. Thank you, Dr. Grande. Um, like some super mega narcissistic disorder type thing going on. In my autobiography. Yes, my autobiography. Oh, yes. Have you read my autobiography? You're not so special, dude. You're not so special. It's like, what gives you, and it's again with these attorneys too. And the attorneys seeming to make requests that are just not viable option. It seemed to agitate the parole board. And I wonder, the more I see these Act 23 169 hearings, the more we get to see the attorneys that take on their cases. And it just makes me wonder if it's something like, because they're not, I don't even think, I'm not even quite sure if they're public defenders, but actually attorneys, because they all seem to have different addresses and work for different law firms. You don't see this, I cut through it, but at the beginning, what they'll do is they'll say their name, they'll say the law firm they work for, they'll give the address, they give their ID number, and it's a process that drags out. And it's always different offices, which makes me again wonder, like, are they not public defenders, but they're just getting paid by the state? And if so, I wonder how much per case. And then I look at what they do for each case, and the majority, I think there are exceptions where you could get more of a sense that they're invested in it. But a lot of times it feels like they just, they'll make these claims. I've known them for 15 months or for a year or for whatever. And what are you doing during that time? Like, what are you telling them? Are you telling them that they should refer to their autobiography? Are you preparing them at all? Because these speeches we've seen are so often just insane. You hear the speech and you cringe. You say, how is it possible the attorney let them do that? Or they go and make requests that aren't even allowed or viable or have no relevancy to the parole hearing. Again, it's so strange. I'd love to get some deeper insight. If any of you watching this know, because it just feels like more of a money grab thing. Oh, the state's gonna pay to have us represent people who are under the age of 21. Let's see how I can get that money. You know, I would ask Grok or Chat GPT, but I found recently I've run searches. It was on Grok, and I asked a question about something that I knew a lot about, and Grok straight up lied. He lied completely, and so I called out the lie, and then he lied again. So yeah, I guess I learned the hard way. These chat AI stuff, got to be very careful with them. So yeah, that's another thing. Anyways, I at least we don't need to worry about this guy for another 5 years. There you have it. With that, I'll let you go.
Your attorney even blames the DOC for failure to provide critical treatment. Right? Don't you think it had something or maybe everything to do with your conduct? Because I'll tell you that sitting here, right? I've done a lot with 1584s, 2369s, and commutations. So I've seen my fair share of people who have committed murder. And people who come before the board who actually, you know, have a great deal of regret, a great deal of taking responsibility and accountability, have a list of programming that they've been able to accomplish in DOC